August baseball is wrapping up, which means it's time to look forward to all the tight division races that we have right now. There are only two, but they're both really good. Welcome back to Good Sports for You, where we are talking about good sports for you. And we are going to be talking about the two division races right now that really matter, because out east, the Phillies and the Blue Jays got sizable leads. In the Central, it's even more of a joke. The Tigers have been doing really well all season, and the Brewers have absolutely run away with the division. So now we turn our attentions all the way out west, to the NL West and the AL West, where you have teams that were supposed to easily climb the top of these mountains, and they've not climbed as well as you would have liked. And then you have another division where it was supposed to be a tough, gritty battle between three teams, and one of the teams has just completely fallen off the face of the earth, kind of, when it comes to this division race. So let's talk about it for a little bit. Starting off in the NL West, the Dodgers were looking incredible last year, and they added even more pieces. They were supposed to run away with the division. They were supposed to be one of the best teams ever. ESPN said the thing to keep an eye out for them this year is to see if they would have the most wins in an MLB season ever. They had a 97.7% chance to make the playoffs this year, according to ESPN preseason. Now, the other teams around there, you were looking at like the Diamondbacks, a feisty young team who's trying to keep up with the mighty Dodgers. Or you had the Padres, the fun-loving team who had their own brand of flair, who everyone liked, but they were kind of a step back. But you know, that Dodgers-Padres rivalry is always good, especially right now. And then you had the Giants, who were definitely a step down, but they were still looking like a competitive team after they signed Willy Adames to a huge contract. Buster Posey was clearly looking to make some big moves since he's taken over the front office. And then you had the Rockies, which a lot of people were saying were going to be one of the worst teams in baseball, and they have been one of the worst teams in baseball. They've been one of the worst teams ever, actually. But they also do have some good players, but we're not really going to talk about them. But keep an eye out for Hunter Goodman. He's a really, really talented player who can play catcher and he can play the outfield, and he was their only all-star this year. But anyway, we're not really going to talk about the Rockies. Like we said, we're going to talk about the playoff race, and we're going to talk about the division hunt that the Dodgers were supposed to absolutely run away with. So what happened? There were a lot of injuries. They had so many starting pitchers. They had an absolute plethora. They had such a luxury that any team would have been embarrassed to have that many players. And so many of them got hurt. So it was just kind of like, what do we do? What do we do? For a team that was supposed to be so deep, they were kind of struggling to pull pieces together. Blake Snell got hurt. I mean, Shohei obviously got hurt. You had just a lot of players beginning to fall off. Mookie Betts has had one of his most disappointing seasons ever. He's not played up to his previously MVP caliber's play. You have players like Shohei Ohtani, who's obviously done amazing. Freddie Freeman's obviously done amazing. Their bullpen, though, has not been great. Like, I was watching the game the other day, and they don't really have a lot of pieces right now that you're like, oh, they're feeling really good. They're really solidified. The Diamondbacks have just really taken a step back when we're talking about that team. They just haven't been as competitive as they are that year as they were when they made it to the World Series. And like, these things happen. Like, you can expect that with a young team. Like, they're going to regress a little bit, which is a bummer, obviously. But, you know, what can you do? And then you'll look over at the Padres. I don't know why people doubt the Padres. Like, they're a good team. They need to be respected as such. And they played like a good team this season, and then they made some big-time deadline acquisitions, which I want to get to later when we talk a little bit about why the deadline was so big for both of these divisions. So now we're going to transition over a little bit to the AL West, when you had teams like the Rangers, the Astros, and the Mariners. That was basically the consensus top three. People were saying that the Rangers were the number one team, probably because they had this young, talented core who was really good, and also they also had very good pitching with Nathan Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom and all of these players. The Astros were kind of viewed as they're going to take a step back. They don't have Correa anymore. They just lost Alex Bregman. Jose Altuve is getting older. They lost Kyle Tucker. Like, kind of what are they going to do? But the thing that I've learned about the Astros is you can never, ever count them out. I know the whole entire cheating scandal, but at the end of the day, they're a well-run organization who knows how to win ball games and put their players in winning positions, and that's exactly what they've been doing. And then the Mariners, again, they're a team that's kind of like this young team. They kind of want to see what happens. They had a high ceiling, but a pretty low floor, and they've reached a lot of that ceiling. Cal Raleigh is having one of the best seasons of any catcher ever, and he has been a huge reason of why this team is doing so well. In addition, their pitching staff is incredible, and their way of developing pitchers is so good. They also have players like Randy Arozarena and Julio Rodriguez. But again, they made some big-time trade acquisitions at the deadline, which has closed up this lead in the division. And so that's what I wanted to get into next, is the trade deadline for both of these divisions. The Mariners clearly wanted to stay competitive this year. They viewed this division as a winnable division, so they tried to seize the opportunity by getting players like Eugenio Suarez and also Josh Naylor. Both of those players were viewed as some of the better trade acquisitions at the deadline. Suarez was viewed as the premier third baseman acquisition that you could get. However, he has not really lived up to that since he's been back in a Mariners uniform. But at the end of the day, he's a talented player, and I don't doubt that he's going to be performing well for them as it gets down to the stretch. And the same thing holds true with Naylor. He's a very talented player, and at the end of the day, they just made the team a little bit better. They cleaned up around the edges, and that's really what the trade deadline is for. So they made some big-time moves to put the pressure on the Houston Astros, and the Astros responded in a big-time way by getting back their old fling in Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa is obviously one of the most talented shortstops that we've seen in a very long time, and he's been an incredible player. Now, he does have a long injury history. His ankles are just absolutely awful, so hopefully that those things don't happen. But with that being said, these teams have been fighting now neck and neck, and that's all led up to a 1.5 game lead that the Astros have over the Mariners, which is extremely tight, especially as we are getting into September baseball, so we will see what happens over there. Now, moving on to the NL West and the trade deadline over there, again, it was a really exciting time for a lot of these teams. But first, when we're talking about trades, we got to go even before the trade deadline, and we're looking at the Giants. The Giants have been aggressive. They viewed this division as a division that they could win, actually. Like, they've made big-time moves to try to stay competitive. And the biggest move that they had was making the trade for Rafi Devers from the Red Sox. And Devers, again, he's a good player and he's a talented player. Buster Posey was put in the sign-up basically that says, hey, we're trying to be competitive and we're trying to win now. Unfortunately, they haven't been winning now. They've dipped below 500 and they've kind of dropped out of the race. If they're able to really put it together, they could make a run at the wild card spot, but I really doubt that these things would happen. And then the Diamondbacks, I'm sure you could figure this out. As we mentioned before, they kind of sold at the deadline. They sold Suarez. They sold Naylor. They sold Shelby Miller to the Brewers. They sold off a lot of these key pieces who they thought would help them reestablish themselves and make a really solid run this year. And that just didn't happen. So honestly, I think they made the right decision by saying, hey, clearly we're not going to win the division this year. Clearly we're not really going to be as competitive as we want to be. Again, if they somehow pulled off a string of wins, maybe they could compete for a wild card spot. But I just have more faith in the Giants in being able to do that rather than the Diamondbacks. I just really don't see it happening. But the two teams that we really want to talk about over in the NL West is going to be the Padres and the Dodgers. The Padres made some big-time acquisitions. They bolstered their bullpen with the likes of Mason Miller. They now have one of the best bullpens in all of baseball, if not the best, honestly. I mean, they had Mason Miller coming out in the 7th inning. This is a guy who is supposed to be like a premier closer, and they have him in the 7th. The point of these bullpens is honestly just to shorten the game, because the point is that if you can say to your starting pitcher, hey, we only need you to go 6 innings. Mind you, in the modern MLB, 6 innings is kind of a lot. But when you say, hey, we need you to go 6 innings, just pitch some quality ball. You can give up a couple runs here or there. We trust in our offense enough to be able to get them back. But we got 3 guys, we got 4 guys, we got 5 guys who are going to shut them down for the rest of the 3 innings. So just take some time, don't worry about it. Or even with a team that's deep in that bullpen, they could honestly say, hey, you only need to pitch 5 innings. We got it from there. But I mean, Mason Miller coming out in the 7th is basically unheard of for a pitcher of his caliber to not even be the setup man, but be the setup of the setup. And I really like that. To be able to they were the fireman, bring back the fireman, you know what I'm saying? Where you see that there's a fire going on, you got trouble on the base paths, and you say, hey, we need you right now, let's get going. The fireman comes in and he's just spraying them down. And when you got such a deep bullpen, you can do that way earlier in the game. So I love that for the Padres. The Dodgers, on the other hand, really didn't make a lot of substantial moves. They kind of stood pat, which, I mean, I get if you're the Dodgers because you have arguably the most talented roster in the history of baseball, but also at the same time, your division rivals are making moves and you don't have a huge elite to play with. So I was kind of confused on why they didn't make a ton of moves at the deadline. But I mean, they're back on top now. They just swept the Padres to take a 2-game lead in the division, which great for the Dodgers, like whoop-de-doo. Obviously for the Padres that does hurt, but also like this brings back a little bit of life to this team because they were right there. They had the lead in the division going into this series. They are completely not out of it right now. They can still fight. And honestly, I think it's going to be a really good division race wrapping up. So I'm really excited to see what happens. Obviously, like the Dodgers, they have chinks in the armor. Like they're not this impenetrable juggernaut that a lot of people thought they were going to be before the season started. Like their bullpen, I don't really think is elite. Like we saw that the Padres bullpen just simply outclassed them in this series. Like I said, even though the Padres lost this series, like the bullpen was there. The bullpen is going to be there, and when you're facing teams like in the postseason, like if you run into the Cubs, if you run into the Brewers, if you run into the Phillies, like they have teams that aren't gonna take no for an answer. Like you need to play incredibly well against any of those teams that I mentioned, and also teams like the Padres, where you need to play a really quality brand of baseball. And if you don't have a bullpen to back that up, that's gonna be really tough on your starting pitching and also then on the rest of your team. I mean, it's just, I don't know, the team just isn't as this impenetrable force as I thought a lot of people would be. I think the climb to the top of the mountain is going to be really exciting for both of these divisions. I mean, over in the AL, I mean, the Mariners are right there and they're fighting. They're a really fun team. And then you have this Astros team, which is, again, still kind of this old guard of, hey, we've been here before. We know how to do things. Mind you that the team is a little bit different. Also, I forgot to mention this. Josh Hader got hurt, which is huge. And he's projected to be out for the rest of the regular season, which, I mean, that presents a huge window for the Mariners if they can take advantage of one of the best closers that the game has ever seen being out of it right now. So Mariners, take advantage of that right now. Like, try to build up as much of a lead as you can. Well, first of all, you got to get in the lead, but try to do that. But like I said, the Astros are like this team that kind of has this like old guard kind of feel, and the Mariners don't, which I think will be a lot of fun. And then over on the NL side, you got the Dodgers, who is again viewed as this like impossible juggernaut, and we'll see what happens. And then the Padres have beefed up. They view this as an opening, and they want to try to sneak in. So it's been really exciting, and I hope that we get some really good September baseball, which will lead to good October baseball. I hope that we have some fun games down the stretch, and I hope that you enjoyed watching. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all those things that you got to do, comment, and thank you so much.